Ben Carson made news after he beat Donald Trump in the Iowa polls, and Donald Trump wasn't too happy about it. In fact, he spoke out against it and said that, you know what, maybe this isn't that big of a deal because Ben Carson has low energy. Take a look.
Carson is super low. I don't understand the whole deal. I don't know what's going on. Carson is lower energy than Bush. I don't understand what's going on because we're going to talk about the fact that for the first time in 100 days, I had a poll that said, I'm in second place in Iowa. Oh, don't worry. Don't worry. Only in Iowa. The rest were killing. But for some reason, I had a bad week in Iowa, which I don't believe. The headlines today all over Fox and CNN and everything. Trump losing in polls to Carson. Carson. I don't think Carson's going to negotiate really well with China, folks, in all fairness. Okay? I don't think so. And I like him. I don't think so.
I love everything about that video. I love his goofy hat, Make America Great Again. I love the fact that his hat almost perfectly matches his skin color.
Totally. Yeah, he's literally red in the face. He's like, Carson! Carson! He's low energy! I'm like, dude, I got that you're high energy. That message was very loud and clear.
He is the antithesis of Carson in some ways, but also very similar in other ways, right? Yep. So, of course, this is par for the course when it comes to Donald Trump. Not surprised by his reaction, very entertained by his reaction, in fact. And Ben Carson wanted to defend himself while he went on Meet the Press. So he was kind of asked about his, low energy and whether or not he agrees with it, and here's what he had to say.
I am soft-spoken. I do have a tendency to be relaxed. I wasn't always like that. There was a time when I was, very volatile, but, I changed.
When was that?
As a teenager. I would go after people with rocks and bricks and baseball bats and hammers, and of course, many people know the story when I was 14 and I tried to stab someone. And, fortunately, my life has been changed, and I'm a very different person now.
That is enormously strange. First of all, almost no one knew that you tried to stab someone. So I don't know where you're going with that. Everybody knew that. Second of all, that story actually made me really dislike Ben Carson. And I'll tell you why. Okay. So do I hate him for what he did as a 14-year-old? No, of course not. I mean, he grew up in a totally different circumstance. I don't know what that was about. I don't know if it was self-defense. I'm not going to get into judging 14-year-old Ben Carson. But what I hate about it is it further validates all the stereotypes for white Republicans in their heads. And that's why they love this guy. You see that even the famous brain surgeon, when he was younger, was violent. Stones and stabbings and all that. You know how they are, right? And then he said later in that story, but then he went home and he prayed about it, and that Jesus helped him to see the light. So, for white Republicans, this is manna from heaven. We took this savage, and Jesus saved him and made him a neurosurgeon, and now he comes out here and tells us everything we want to hear. It's all black culture's fault. It's all the black people's fault. And if they would just listen to the cops and authority figures and bow their heads, I mean, we're not going to give them any money or any help or any assistance. But if they would accept that fate, then everything would be great. Oh, Ben Carson, exactly our kind of black guy.
That's actually a perspective I never even thought about, but you're right. I mean, it does play into the stereotypes that they push constantly, and so I wouldn't be surprised if people did point to that interview and say, see. But I do also know that that entire interview that he did really played to evangelicals in Iowa, because not only did he talk about how he changed because he prayed, right? But he also talked about the abortion thing where he's like, no exceptions when it comes to abortions. Maybe if the woman's life is in danger, but rape and incest, don't give a shit. You got to have the baby, right? Yep. So evangelicals love that. And there are a lot of evangelicals in Iowa, and I know that he's trying to kind of play to them.
And by the way, I'm sorry, can I just say that he said when it comes to the life of the mother, he said there's room to discuss that.
That's exactly what he said, yeah. So he doesn't even think that it's a clear-cut case if the woman's life is in danger. And by the way, he also kind of emphasized that, oh, that's like extremely rare. Well, we didn't ask you how rare it is. We asked you what you would do in that circumstance.
Yeah, and by the way, as always, they make up how rare it is. They make up numbers about how rare it is. It's actually not true what they say. So not surprising at all there. Now, in terms of how it's going to play out in politics, you're right, Anna. The evangelicals are going to eat that up. Oh, the savage found Jesus, and and then he became a good guy and really smart. Oh, they're eating that up. They love it. And then, he hates women and won't even save their lives, even if they were raped, as long as we can protect a fetus. Keep the women down. I mean, protect the fetus, right? Oh, I love it. I love it. They kind of like that he's soft-spoken. Trump seems brash. And Trump is obviously not as religious as Ben Carson. Now he claims otherwise. Of course, Trump then went out and said, hey, I'm Presbyterian. That's right down the middle. This exact quote. I'm right. That's right down the middle, right? He's like, he's Seventh-day Adventist. What's that about? It's unbelievable. Of course, the usual Trump move. But Trump attacking Carson doesn't play as well as Trump attacking Bush, because Bush is establishment.
Yeah.
So the Republican voters hate the establishment now, but they don't hate Ben Carson. They like Ben Carson for all the reasons that we just stated here. So Trump ought to be careful in how he attacks him.
So I know that a lot of people are not excited, but they're amazed at the fact that Ben Carson beat Trump in the polls in Iowa, right? Yeah.
And it's just polling, by the way.
It's just polling. It doesn't mean that he won, the primary in Iowa or the caucus, right? But didn't not Mitt Romney, I'm sorry, Santorum, didn't Santorum win the caucus in Iowa? It doesn't mean much.
No, the Iowa caucus, the only time it's ever really mattered is when Obama beat Hillary Clinton and shocked the world. And people are like, whoa, what happened there? They didn't see that coming. But on the right-wing side, on the Republican side, always, not always, but almost always, the right-wing super Christian zealot does much better and oftentimes wins the Iowa caucus and then goes out to Schwang, Wang, Wang in the rest of the states.
Yeah.
So don't get all hyped up about Ben Carson's going to win nationwide. He's not. And part of the reason is because Trump is ironically kind of right about the low energy thing. I mean, at the end of the day, you're like, who is it? This guy's going to be commander-in-chief? This guy's going to lead the nation?
I got to be honest with you. That interview where he talked about his inner demons and how he supposedly got past them, that actually scared me more, because the people who are constantly cool, calm, collected, and they seem like they're low energy, and then you find out they had this like crazy violent past, you don't know when that's going to bubble up again. Maybe that's an unfair accusation, but always fear the quiet ones. Okay.
Well, then there's a lot to fear about Ben Carson. The state of our union is kind of okay.
And I'm not talking about introverts. I'm talking specifically about people who make very strong statements, like constantly talking about slavery, comparing things to slavery, constantly talking about Nazis, and then they do so in a very calm, relaxed voice. It's like they're saying the most extreme things you can imagine, but they're saying it calmly, so you think that it's totally fine and reasonable.
Yes.
Just fear those guys.